You'll never get anything in your life that the subconscious mind doesn't say yes to. If the subconscious mind has a program that will prevent you from having a successful business or relationship or being a loving and caring parent, if you have a program in there and you don't change it, you're screwed, because you're going to get whatever's in there. Now, the good news is you can change the programming. You don't like that programming, you're not screwed. It's like you figure out where you're stuck, and then you apply the principles to get unstuck in a life-changing way where you go, whoa, like I can use this in other ways.
So I got book in hand. I have been meticulously reading and discovering a lot about you. And one place I want to start, this book is a story.
Mm-hmm.
And in building a story, you have to know the contents of what you're trying to describe in a story so well to be able to then mask it with a story to make it simple. There's a quote I love. I used to use this when I was coaching athletes that were young. If you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't understand it. So you've made it simple. But I really want to talk first about how sophisticated you have to be to build something simple. It doesn't matter whether it's, breaking through in mindset or if it's, I don't know, a tech company. Sophistication in simplicity is really challenging. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm good at, maybe because I'm not that intelligent, I'm not sure, but is to take things that are really complicated and to be able to make them more usable. And so, I mean, when you really think about, what I was writing about, like how do you create massive breakthroughs in your life? How do you live a life without limits? You can go you can get pretty complicated with how to do. There's a million different things you can focus on. And I probably focused on maybe not a million, but I've learned a lot over the years. And then, I noticed myself, in the past kind of bouncing around, try this. But I said, what if there was like a simple way to incorporate many things in a more powerful and usable way? And so that's why I wrote the book. And I have 3 big ideas, right? So it's not like there's a million things you've got to do. Now, each big idea does have habits underneath it to make that big idea come to life. But that's what I like in life. Even when I'm giving presentations, and I wrote a book on presentations, I say whenever you're communicating anything to anybody, you should be able to do it with 3 big ideas, and or 2 or 1, right, is even better. But no more than 3. When you start getting into the 7 keys to blah, 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 like I used to do that back in the day, you'd go out and give a presentation, the 7 keys to success. Number 1, right? I knew that one, right? Number 2, number 3. And then I get number 4, like, what the hell is number 4, right? And I'm the one that created it, so I know no one else is going to remember it. So I always try and do like 3 big ideas for any concept.
It's funny you say that too, because I think that complexity makes it not only hard to remember, hard to teach, it also muddies the water for being clear.
Yeah.
I remember a former teammate of mine, we built a financial education company together, and he would say all the time, like, kind is clear, clear is kind. Kind is clear, clear is kind. And that was kind of in a space where we were communicating big money ideas to middle schoolers and high schoolers. Yeah. But I also don't think that the conversation around simplicity, like if you're taking these big complicated things and making them simple, I don't think we talk about how hard that is. It's a difficult process.
Well, and it's difficult. The difficulty is in our own minds, because we see all these things we could, make it be, the 10 things, the 20 things, the 30 things. And there may be 30 things in it, but they need containers. The mind doesn't remember well when things are bled out. As a matter of fact, I used to tell the story, but my son, when he was in college, he was in an investment club or something like that, and I don't remember how he learned it, but he was telling me. I said, "Well, what'd you learn?" And he said, they studied Warren Buffett, I guess it was, and Buffett said, his concept was when you make things, or when you make your investment philosophy where you're picking too many different things, right? Too many different stocks in this case, you're not going to succeed. He said, because you're going to get too far out of what you know and what really works. And so, Warren Buffett has become a billionaire by really sticking to a philosophy that he can explain very, very easily, value investing. And has he missed out on some winners? Sure. But he's made up for it by really, hitting the mark on what he knows well. And that's even one of the big ideas I have in the Breakthrough Code is focus on less and then obsess, not a conscious obsession. I don't want people like obsessing, up day and night. That's kind of crazy because you've got another part of your mind called the subconscious mind. And so if we can get that to adopt what you want, it works 24/7 and it'll guide you to exactly where you want to go. But, the concept of having a simple set of ideas that you're operating on, creates a structure that can accomplish a lot more. When you get too complex, there's too many things that can fall through the cracks, and it's just hard to keep up on.
I couldn't agree more. It's interesting that you say less. I want to dig there, but I also think that the more complex we make our lives, the harder it is to manage. Sure. The more complex we make our business, the harder it is to manage. The more complex we make our health and fitness, the harder it is to manage. And my sense of the world lately is that everything is being pulled towards complexity and being sold to simplicity. So I've read this stat the other day that the thing that millennials pay the most for is convenience.
Yeah.
Right. I can just order it. I can just snap it. I get it in 2 days. So it's almost like simplicity is being sold to us more, and we're not really arming ourselves with the tools to keep our business, our life, our money simple. It just keeps getting more complicated. So I also know that, through the lens of this, again, if you haven't picked this book up, you owe yourself a copy of this right away. That you've done a great job of building simplicity in and building something that someone can read and activate it without a whole lot of other noise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
But thank you, Aaron. But you're right. Like, and I've fallen into the trap many, many times of, well, if I just have this, right, this is going to make everything easier. Right. And then this, and then, so I buy this and I buy that and I buy this and I buy that. And then I got a bunch of stuff and it's all good. Right. But, there's 24 hours in a day and, we're sleeping 7 or 8 of those hours and then, getting around to actually trying to integrate it into something. So you do have to be careful because the next best thing always looks good. The shiny object looks very enticing, but the reality is life is really lived in our minds. And, we think we need all these outside things. And the more we go outside, the more we lose our power. With the power, almost all the power, I could even say probably all the power is inside of us. And that's what I'm trying to help people unleash. But raise my hand like I'm guilty. Oh yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I love new tech and new, gadgets and stuff like that. So yeah.
First of all, that's a great quote. The more we go outside, the more we lose our power. I think the first thing that came to mind when you were sharing that is a morning routine. I used to have this crazy complicated morning routine. And I was just like borrowing from people that are doing things. Someone's like, man, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to do 100 push. I'm like, okay, 100 push-ups. Yeah. Here we go. Then all of a sudden I'm doing push-ups. I'm reading. It got out of control. Yeah. And I think that my challenge for the majority of my 20s, probably the beginning of my 30s too, is looking at the world and saying, well, I want more. And I don't know that I was clear on my more, but I knew I wanted more. And my process to getting more was addition. And like a morning routine, the more I added, the less valuable a routine got.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, I had to start cutting. Yeah. I had to start subtracting. Yeah. And there's so much value in cutting.
Yeah.
So you've obviously written a lot about this and think about it a lot. The process of eliminating is usually uncomfortable, but it's kind of those it's a paradox. If we want more, we need less.
Yeah.
How can we help someone that's stuck in that phase of like, but I don't want to make some of these cuts, or I'm scared of making some of these cuts, really go and just be aggressive and break?
Yeah. Yeah. It's challenging, because we are taught in the material world that, to look outside for everything, look at, touch it, feel it. If you can't touch it and feel it, it doesn't exist. And, as I've aged, cause I've had all the stuff, right? All the stuff that, I want, I usually just go and buy it. My wife thinks like, you don't even think about it, do you? No, you just get it. Right. And then, but then you usually end up, sometimes it makes you happy for a little while, right? Or it's good and effective. But a lot of times the things that I'm, really excited about, and I think they're going to be life-changing, and they're a little disappointing. But it's a trap that maybe not all human beings, but I think most of us do fall into. And I'm reading now, I just finished reading a book called The Autobiography of a Yogi, which I probably should have read many, many years ago, but it's by Yogananda, and it's one of the best-selling books around the world, for a long, long time, written back in the 30s and 40s. And he was this amazing guy. Like, he had these like unbelievable powers, call them, but he lived a very simple life. He wasn't worried about being able to acquire this and make that happen. Things just happened for him because he was very connected, right, to the universe, God, whatever you want to have it, or whatever you want to call it. And the breakthrough code really is, I don't say this out loud a lot, but it's my attempt to introduce also some spiritual principles in a way that non-religious, right? Not going against anybody's belief systems, but in a way to let people understand that we are capable of so much and we don't need much to activate it, right? We don't need outside things. We have this unbelievable mind. The conscious mind is cool, right? Processes 40 bits of information per second. That's what you and I are kind of thinking through stuff with. But when the magic happens, when you're out giving a talk or a presentation and things are just flowing through you, that's not your conscious mind. That's probably not even your subconscious mind. That's what I call your superconscious mind that's connected to everything. And when we can make that come to life, when we're tapping into that, that's when the magic really happens. That's when, you think of somebody you haven't heard from in, a year or months or whatever, and they email you or they give you a call, right? That's when I had a story of my son. I don't know if I told you this story, but my son was in private equity after college, and he was working on a deal to buy a company that everyone would know. I can't say it online, but a company everyone would know. And they needed a couple $100 million of equity. Now he was like, 24, 25. He's a junior partner in this private equity firm. And he goes, Dad, what do I do? And I said, program your mind. Calling your superconscious mind, program your mind to always be in the right place at the right time and just see what happens, but just be in the right place at the right time. And so he's a big believer in the power of the mind. He was a college athlete, Division I college basketball player. He had a herniated disc where he basically was crippled for a couple years, couldn't even walk when he was trying to play basketball. And using his mind, like, he got rid of all the pain from the herniated disc. Still has a herniated disc, but he has no pain, 5 years later, like for 5 years, no pain. So he believes in the mind. And so he calls me up like a week after I told him, program your mind to be in the right place at the right time. He goes, Dad, you never believe what happened. I go, what? And he said, I'm walking down the street. He lived up in West Hollywood in LA. And this guy's, I barely noticed him, but this guy was jogging towards me. And all of a sudden, right before he gets to me, he stops right in front of me. And he tells me, he goes, hey, I don't know why I'm stopping right now, but something tells me I need to talk with you. And I said, did it freak you out a little bit? My son said, yeah, it kind of did. And I said, how old was the guy? He said, Dad, he's an old guy. He's like your age, right? And
ouch.
Yeah. And then I said, well, and what did he say? He asked me, what do I do? And I said, what'd you tell him? He said, I told him I'm an investor. And the guy said, I'm an investor too. And he goes, look, I live up in Beverly Hills. I don't even jog this way. Somebody told me to jog this way. And I don't know why I'm stopping to talk to you, but if there's ever a reason we should talk, let me know. And so my son was like a little bit, this is kind of weird, but the guy gave him his information. He goes back, looks him up. The guy's a billionaire. The guy runs a $4 billion private equity fund. And my son calls him up. He says, I think there's a reason we should talk. And they meet 2 days later for lunch. My son had his senior partners in the meeting. The guy goes, look, I like this deal, but I want to have another guy look at it too that sometimes invests with me. He knows his space better than I do. Can we meet for dinner or whatever? So they meet for dinner 2 days later. Each of those guys committed $100 million to that deal. Now, this was off a chance meeting on a sidewalk. That how the hell did that happen? But my son had programmed his mind and to create that chance meeting. And some people might say, oh, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. Yeah, it is ridiculous to meet someone that's a billionaire. Yeah. Well, when you're looking for 200 million and the guy's minimum check he writes is 100 million, and then he brings another guy in for 100 million. But that kind of stuff, I mean, not always 200 million. That happens for my son all the time. That happens for me all the time. I mean, different things. It's not always money. It's not always financial things, but meeting the right person who's got an answer for something you need, that happens to me all the time. But it's not because I'm so amazing, I'm so great. It's because we're all connected. And we're connected with this super consciousness that's beyond our physical body that can get answers. It can get, resources, things that we're never going to find with our little, sliver of conscious mind out there looking for it. But you got to buy into the fact that we all have this ability and we all are connected, and then miracles happen.
First of all, amazing.
That blew my mind too when he called me up and told me that.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably a pretty proud dad moment. There's nothing that could top that.
I mean, it's a proud dad moment, but the reality is, my son he's a great young man, but it's not that he's more talented than anyone else. He just knows how to, and because he learned it, right? We've talked about we don't really have limits. We're connected to everything. That's been in our family for a lot of years, and we forget it. I forget it sometimes, and I get frustrated. And why is this not working out? And then I go back to the breakthrough code, and the breakthrough code is not my invention. The breakthrough code that I wrote about in the book, which is a story, a parable. There's a lot of things in my life that happened that I weaved into the book, so I was able to create a story. But the breakthrough code is just what I see. Like if I watched you, I would see how you've gotten to where you are through focusing on something you really wanted, like getting an end result and seeing it and feeling it and believing it and not letting go of it, right? And then the subconscious mind, it starts to adopt it and goes, hey, all right, we got to get this for Aaron, right? And then upgrading your story to upgrade your life. The story is just who we think we are, what we're capable of, what does the world mean? How do we view what's possible and what's not possible? And then the third aspect is packing your day with effective action. Well, what's effective action? It's not massive action. It's not like going crazy and being frustrated. It's more intuitive action, because when you are bringing your superconscious into the equation, you're guided. You are nudged. You get intuitive nudges. You get signals that other people get, but they ignore them. And you start to notice them more. You become, I don't want to say psychic, but you almost become that. You have this extra sense, right, that guides you, not always consciously, but it guides you in ways where you show up at the sidewalk at the exact time that another guy is going to be jogging down a street, right, without thinking about it consciously.
I think in some ways the feeling has always been the hard part for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it. I can hear it.
Yeah.
And I'd say this is true for a lot of clients too, where what's going on is we can design and architect it. We can dig in deep enough to get to a place where there's like a tactility to it. But that bridge to feeling it is hard to cross over. What tactics can we use? Some of which I know you go through here, but if you're disconnected emotionally from your vision, from your dream, how do you bridge that gap?
Well, you have to bridge the gap, because if you are disconnected emotionally from it, the subconscious mind is not getting the right signal. The subconscious mind doesn't really process just language. Like if you say, I want X, or I am X, right? You try and upgrade your story. The subconscious mind doesn't get that. Like you've got to see it. Like you are X, show me what X looks like. You have X, show me what it feels like to have X. And then once it gets the kind of the vision of it, and it doesn't have to be like super clear vision. Like I don't always see things super clear. As a matter of fact, I rarely do. But I get, kind of, I can see it. Just, I mean, it might not be like, 4K, but I can kind of see it in my own muddled way. And I can feel it, like feeling what it feels like to already be there. And this is the leap that most people won't make in their mind, because again, they're bound by the 3D world, right? I've got to be able to touch it. Like, what if I really believed I was already there and I don't get it, right? Oh, you don't get it. Yeah. All right. So what? Like, is that going to be the end of your world if you see it, feel it, and don't get it? And some people think it is, right? I can't ever trust again. But the reality is, Einstein said your imagination is the preview of coming attractions. He said your imagination is more important than your knowledge. Your knowledge is based upon what's already been discovered, what's already known, what you know. Your imagination has no limits. You can imagine something like Steve Jobs did not use knowledge to create the iPhone back in 2000. He used his imagination. And I'm sure a lot of the engineers were like, I'm out of here. This is crazy. We can never do this. And that's okay. He found some that saw that end result, had a story that made it possible, and then took action. And a lot of times the action was intuitive. It wasn't probably even logical the way that iPhone was built, or the way that Elon Musk creates things. And these guys they were really amazing creators. Now, sometimes they weren't the best people in terms of the way they treated other people. So I'm not saying they were amazing in all ways, but they could see, feel, and believe. I had a friend that was actually became a pretty famous Navy SEAL and has written some books, but he graduated from college and he was in an accounting firm in New York, and he didn't like it. He was on the fast track, right? He's going to go big places, but he didn't want it. And he was walking home one day and he walked by a Navy recruiting office and he saw a sign in the window, a poster in the window that had, them doing all this grungy, it didn't say SEALs, but it was all the SEAL stuff. And he goes in there and he goes, I want to do that, what they're doing in the picture. And the guy goes, no, you don't want to do that. He was wearing a suit and everything. He goes, you don't want to do that. He goes, you got this good job. You don't want to do that. Plus, it's not even worth you applying. We only take 2 people each year from outside the Navy to even try out to be an officer, like with a college degree. And so, you won't even get it. So don't do it. And my friend, the only thing he heard when the guy was saying all that was, I don't know who the other guy is, but I know that one of those spots is mine. But so he applied, and for 8 months, not 1 month, not 1 week, not 1 day, which is what most of us do, right? For 8 months, every day he saw it, he felt it, he believed it, right? He talked in his mind about what does it feel, not even just to get to the tryouts, but to be a Navy SEAL. And, he didn't hear anything for 8 months, but he said it was ridiculous. Like when he got to 7, 8 months, he said he was so certain that this was going to be created, right? He said it was so vivid, so clear. And then finally the recruiter calls him back and he goes, I can't believe this. Like out of the thousands and thousands of applicants, like you got one of the spots. But of course he knew he was going to get one of the spots. But he was not visualizing getting one of the spots. He was visualizing being a SEAL. So they had 170 people. I think it was 170 people that, started his training class. 17 graduated. And when you start the training, you're assigned, and I don't know, I think it's like 7 people to a boat, right? They have all these boats, and then people drop out and you get down to like 2 or 3 on your boat. You got to join another boat. Not only did my friend graduate honor man, number 1 person in the class, his boat with the 6 people and him leading it. So I guess there was 7 or maybe, I can't, something like that. Every single one of those men all graduated with him, even though most of the class dropped out, right? 90% of the class dropped out. Everyone on his boat graduated because not only was he so strong in his belief that he was a Navy SEAL, not someone trying to be a Navy SEAL, he was a Navy SEAL. It got transferred to the people on his team. So but this is super important. Like the subconscious mind and the superconscious mind, which can rewrite code in the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind can process 40 million bits of information per second. The superconscious mind, infinity, right? It's everything. And so when the superconscious knows what we want and the subconscious is in alignment with what we want, we tend to get it. But it's not just saying, I want this. That's part of it and focusing on it, but then making sure we're focusing on a way where we feel it. We feel it, right? We feel it. And so if it's a struggle for people, I think they just need to, use their imagination more. And sometimes what I do is I'll just talk to myself, and I'll say, I now have this and it feels like X, right? And I narrate it almost like I'm narrating a movie. And then maybe I'm not feeling it, the first day I try it, but I keep narrating and I'm feeling so good and it feels so great. And I feel such a sense of happiness and joy that I was able to create this. We're creators. We're meant to create, but the creation is not going to happen typically the way that most people think it is. They think it's going to happen by you doing stuff in the physical world, which you need to do some of that, but it happens more in the imagination. And Einstein had another quote. He said, it was something about we glorify all the physical things we think that it's going to take, but the imagination is the true creator. The imagination is where the spark of genius is. And everything's created twice. First in your imagination. Even this program, we're on right now, Riverside, that didn't just happen. Someone imagined it, right? And then now we're using it. But it was created in somebody's imagination first. So everything's created first on the inside, and then it shows up on the outside.
I with a young kid, one of the things that comes up is, playtime.
Mm-hmm.
And we sit down, we play blocks and play Legos. Yeah. And imagination is a part of who he is inherently.
Yeah.
And a major part of it.
Yeah.
And as adults, man, we quarantine that segment so fast. We quarantine play, we quarantine fun, dreaming and scheming. And I'm curious if you have built that in, if you built your own play in, if you built your own reflection and imaginating into a process, or, do you go away for it? Do you stay in your house? Do you sit in your car? How do you draw that out of yourself?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time actually back in those, I don't know if you can see, but these chairs behind me, and I have a meditation practice. I'll go back there and think and imagine and I try to also, one of the concepts that's really important with your imagination is to go into innocence, right? And another guy that I met recently, he calls it in no sense. Yeah, but it's difficult for adults to do. Kids can do it, and we do talk them out of it. Hey, come on, do this, do that, do that. And I was guilty of that, raising my daughter and my son to a certain extent. It was kind of all right, do this, get ready for this, make sure you do this before the game or whatever it might be. And I was doing my best at the time, right? Because I'd been an athlete, but I probably did pull back some of their creativity a little bit because, I remember my son even like, in baseball wearing his socks or his uniform a different way. I'm like, no, I don't do that. Do it the way everyone else is doing it, right? Fit in. And I wish I wouldn't have done that. As children, we are born with, and how old is your
21, almost 22 months.
Yeah. So this is really interesting. I know some people who are very intuitive, like, a nurse that's a fourth generation medical intuitive. She's a nurse, registered nurse, but she can pick up things in people, right? What's going on in their bodies. And she's told me this, but also other people have told me this, like we are born intuitive. And I was just down, I'm on the board of something called the Holistic Leadership Council, where we have a lot of different MDs and different people in the health field, but they're holistic. And so it's more about healing in a more natural way and staying healthy and well in a natural way. And one of the guys is a guy, Stanford undergrad, Cal Berkeley, PhD. He had diabetes when he found out he had type 1 diabetes when he was in college and almost died from it. But now he's got a whole course on mastering diabetes, and he has a little daughter that is beautiful, and I've seen her grow up. So, I've seen her, basically right after she was born, and now she's 3 years old. She's got this imaginary person that she talks to, but she can describe this person, the way she looks, and have little conversations with her, and this person talks to her. And some people would go, hey, come on, we don't talk to things we can't see, right? But her parents are encouraging it because, who knows? Maybe there's angels, maybe there's, I don't know, spirits or whatever. But a lot of people think that there are these resources that come to us as guides and can help us along, or, God, talking to us. But then we say, no, can't see it. It's not there, right? And the reality is there's a lot of things we can't see that are there. And when you start tapping into that, then you become more intuitive and you get to places a lot quicker. So with your child, and I did to a certain extent with our kids, but really let their imagination go and let their intuition, like intuition is the power. Like if we were truly intuitive, we would have answers to things that we just can't find in the physical world.
I will take that message as a dad very seriously.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of these moments where I felt imaginative and couldn't tap in, or I felt like my life could be different, but my environment didn't really support it. Like I've had to make a lot of change over the years to make sure that what I see, like the plant that I imagine, it has the right pot. It is really important to me, especially lately, to make sure I'm in the right environment for Emerson, but also for me. And to me, that's been one of the biggest tools to make sure that I am able to stay imaginative, is to change my environment or be in the right environment.
Yeah.
Which has it comes at a cost. Like I think probably everyone listening has invested in themselves in some way, whether that's books at the smallest scale or big programs, high ticket masterminds, or experiences and coaching. But making dynamic change has always felt to me like a momentum machine, that if I'm able to jump in with one choice becomes two becomes four, and it has this exponential increase.
Yeah.
But I do think that each of those times, relativity has become an interesting part of the game. So this is where my question is. There was a point where I got invited to join a mastermind program. It was $5,000. And I was like, whoa, never would I consider that I would put $5,000 in. And I talked to the guy, and he's like, can you come up with $1,000 this weekend? Even that was a stretch. So I busted tail. I was doing one-on-one soccer training the whole weekend to get this closed. Well, flash forward, $5,000 goes out the door fast, much faster. And now the coaching programs and the events and the masterminds are all 12, 15, 20, 50, 100 grand.
Yeah.
And at each level, I think that relativity becomes an interesting part of this game because I get the value of them. I was scared at 5. I'm certainly going to be scared at 50. But if you're doing it right, it also feels like you're never going to quite stay and be comfortable. You're always going to be in motion. And that's where the momentum becomes important. But if someone is, let's say I'm looking at the next tier and the next tier looks exactly like the old tier.
Yeah.
It's just bigger.
Yeah.
Is that the story that needs to be cut? That's a big part of the breakthrough code. If you haven't read it yet, do it. Or is that something that just needs to be shed relative to the magnitude of what I'm trying to buy into or get around?
Yeah. Well, then that's also where you need to trust your intuition. Like something that, is 50 grand. Yeah, I'm in the world of, I'm a speaker and I remember back when I was involved in running, Tony Robbins' company and in my 20s, and he came in one day and I was running sales and marketing and he decided to take his fee and, 2.5 times it. Right. And this was, he was amazing. Like he's always been amazing. But at the time we weren't like crushing it. Like we weren't, every day I'm getting a call for someone to book him. And I said, look, it's not like we're, you really want to do this? And he goes, I guess I had a limitation, right? And he goes, yeah, I want to do it. He goes, because, even if we get one, that instead of me having to go out 2.5 times, right, I go out once because he's traveling like crazy already. And now his fee is, from what that was, it's, I don't know what, 20 times higher or something, like $500,000 or whatever, for a keynote talk. But you've got people that are good marketers that, and I'm not saying he's amazing, right? But you have people that are good marketers that can put a fee out there and they can get it and not always deliver on that value. So I think that's where you need to use your intuition. Like, is this right for me? Is this what I need? And then, if you're working on your intuition, you get intuitive nudges and then the money's not really relative, like, because when you really start to understand the way that everything works, you can create money whenever you want. My son created, a $200 million opportunity, $200 million out of his imagination. Right. And I've had things where, I've created multi-million-dollar opportunities from a chance meeting in an elevator where I was in London and I'm coming down an elevator but I have this prosperity consciousness and then, and I didn't have a specific outcome, but I was teaching this course called Wealth Mastery. And so I'm coming down this elevator and these 2 guys get in the elevator with me and they're dressed in Middle Eastern attire. And I'm just being, happy and joyful. And I'm like, hey, where are you guys from? And they said, they were from Dubai. And I haven't even heard of Dubai, right? This was a long time ago. And I'm like, oh, okay, sounds like a cool place. And we walked towards the program and then I said, I'll see you later. They didn't know I was going to be the speaker. And so, I did my thing and I was going to teach. It was the first day, but I taught it for 4 days. And then I'm walking back and they're like, hey, you didn't tell us you're going to be the speaker. And I said, well, I thought you'd figure it out. And they go, we want to bring you to Dubai. And I'm like, okay. They said, send us your fee and information. This was a long time ago. And I did. And I thought, they probably, maybe they won't even want to pay my fee. It's a long way. I didn't know where it was. And they wrote back and they said, is that it? Right. And I'm like, damn, I should have had a bigger fee. Yeah. They brought me over twice and, paid me a lot of money. And then a guy that was in the audience, he comes up to me at the end and he goes, I want to bring you to Kuwait. I want to quit my business. He was like an engineer with the government and I want to bring you over. And I'm like, geez, make sure you really want to do that. I didn't want to take responsibility for his career, but he brought me over like 15 times. And so, several $1 million off a chance meeting in a chance meeting in an elevator. And those type thing, I'm not saying that happens to me every day, but those types of situations happen. You can create money. You can create prosperity. You can, by adding value, ideally, but you can create that. So if you start worrying about money too much, then again, you're trapped into limitations.
What do you say to the skeptic? What do you say to the person that's like, oh, that's horseshit, or, that won't happen to me, or that can't happen to me?
Yeah. Well,
how do you get the skeptic on board?
If the skeptic is saying that can't happen to me or won't happen to me, I go, you're right. It won't. Yeah. And that's why you have to upgrade your story. Like if you have a story that won't happen to me, then your subconscious mind, the way it works and why it's so powerful is if the subconscious mind says that won't happen to me, if that's the program. And by the way, the programs that we have a lot of times are derived from our parents. When we're young, we don't have a conscious mind that filters out. And I don't want to be a skeptic, right? I want to believe in things. I want to have an imagination. I want to go big in life. But we don't have that. We don't have that filter. And so if a parent is really skeptical and says, don't trust anybody, if anyone tells you that big things are possible, it's a lie. Between ages 0 and 7, it goes right into the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind doesn't have judgment. It just sees the program and it basically operates along the program. It's almost like another lady that I know has a good example. If you go to a restaurant and you order an apple pie, consciously you want an apple pie. That's the conscious mind. I want an apple pie. And then that order goes down into the kitchen and the chefs are there. And the chefs are your subconscious mind. Like, okay, Tom wants an apple pie. And they start making it according to the recipe. They have to stick to the recipe. They don't go, oh, he won't like this, or, this isn't the best way to make it. They have to stick to the recipe. And so they make the apple pie and then they serve it. You get served the apple pie and you're like, this is terrible. It's got ketchup in it. It's got mayonnaise and mustard. Like, who the hell made this? Your subconscious mind made it. That skeptical mind made it. Yeah. And then you go, well, I don't like it. And this is what's happening to a lot of people. Their subconscious mind is creating their life. Like if you want to know what's in your subconscious mind, look at your life. Look at the good things and then look at the struggles. And the struggles will tell you the beliefs that are limiting you that are in your subconscious mind, the memories, the things that are holding you back. It's all in there. You will never get anything in your life. This is what I tell skeptics. You'll never get anything in your life that the subconscious mind doesn't say yes to. If the subconscious mind has a program that will prevent you from having a successful business or relationship or being a loving and caring parent, if you have a program in there and you don't change it, you're screwed because you're going to get whatever's in there. And this is the thing. And it's not because you're a bad person. It's not because consciously you're thinking the wrong way. It has nothing to do with your conscious mind or very little to do with your conscious mind. It's programming, but you can change that programming and your superconscious can actually rewrite that programming, which is really cool.
Listening to you brings up all these different memories of things I was told that have been disproven through the lens of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I have a letter from my brother. My younger brother has been an anchor for me through so many experiences, through the ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship and COVID and all these things. And the most memorable line of them, at least as far as comedy goes, because many of them were like very heartfelt and soulful and mindful. But he said, when you told me you were going to be an entrepreneur, I didn't really understand what that meant. And even today, I'm still not sure what it means, but you keep on paying your bills. So it must be real.
Yeah.
And I think that the world that we lived in, it just didn't have many of those rules. They were programs that we had been running over and over and over that we saw in school, that we heard in school, that, our environment dictated. And it's been interesting learning about this and then circumnavigating back to helping others learn, because without experiencing that for yourself, it's very hard to then help someone change their own story or change their own programming. What is like an early memory of you changing your own programming? Like how did this start for you way back in the day?
Well, I had to, when I was 3, I can still remember, an Army officer showing up to our house, telling my mom that my dad, who was a West Point graduate, Army officer, had been killed in Vietnam like the day before. And so I was thrust into an environment of uncertainty, like nothing that, I was only 3, right? So maybe I didn't understand it totally then. But, and I had a little 2-year-old brother, and I had a 6-month-old brother who had been born while my dad was in Vietnam. And so when something like that happens, which is traumatic, life is not black and white anymore. So for me growing up, I was searching for answers all the time. I wasn't necessarily trusting what everyone else believed in, because my life was like, what the hell happened? Like, this isn't fair. Why me? And so I was looking for answers, and I felt lots of fear and anxiety and, worry and making sure everyone was okay around me. And there were benefits too, though, because I was a seeker. I was looking for answers. I would look in different places than everyone else would look. I would read books that people my age weren't reading, right? I would start businesses. I would, do different things. So on the outside, I was this, good student, good athlete. But on the inside, I was really searching. And so I didn't have a solid foundation per se, which was challenging, but also it made me read books. I remember reading a book called Illusions, right? Where basically it said everything's just an illusion. And it was a parable, but, and it was kind of the Christ story. And saying that Jesus was here to teach us that, this is all an illusion. Like, we can create what we want if we really take full power of our minds. And so I learned that at a pretty young age. It kind of freaked me out. Right. And I'm not, listen, I've learned a lot of things, and I'm still so far from perfect, because we fall back into our patterns sometimes. We're living in a physical world, even though we really are spiritual beings. And if you go too far to the spiritual, it's like, why even be in the physical world, right? If you go too far to the physical, you totally forget where your real power comes from, and that is, being a spiritual being. And so I think, the challenging thing is to figure out a way to kind of plant one foot in and one foot, in the non-physical world. But I forget, right? I forget. And sometimes I get too far rotated in one or the other. And that's usually when, there's a lesson to be learned, but yeah.
I over-rotate, I think, pretty often too.
Yeah. Well, listen, there's probably a few people that don't, they're, like the super enlightened human beings or, beings on this planet. But the rest of us are just, learning, figuring it out, advancing, hopefully in who we really are and our connection with God or the universe or whatever your belief systems are. But it's not easy, but it is really rewarding. And it's what really drives me now is that, evolving as a being, not just making more money. I love making money. It's cool, especially when I know I'm adding a lot of value to people. But there's more than that. I think there's more than that to life. And that's what's driving me now.
I know a big part of the breakthrough code too is this idea of purpose. So that lines up with stories. And I think there's a lot inside of knowing your story and changing it. I'm headed to Austin this week to run an event for about 100 people to talk about influence.
Yeah.
And one of the things that comes up often in coaching is very similar to one of your 3 pillars in this story. And there's a quote from Denzel Washington that comes up on Instagram often that I see, sort of base it down. Don't confuse movement with progress. And I think a big part of my journey as an entrepreneur was a lot of movement.
Mhm.
Like my senses needed this push all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's also the reason that I've over rotated is because motion felt like I was making progress. They were just mislabeled.
Yeah.
And I got kind of lost in this space of I don't know what to do right now, which usually I've learned just means I should pause, like just rest. But younger me was like, no, I need to keep moving, like always make progress.
Yeah.
Really, I was just shaken. But I think it can get harder and harder as you level up to understand what an effective action, that's your language, what it really is, because it's going to look very different from your old effective actions.
Yeah.
Our actions over time become more and more ineffective. So how can we, as business leaders, as stewards of value to others, as coaches, as mentors, how can we make sure that we're willing to evolve what our effective action looks like and what it is?
Yeah. Well, we've all been taught like work really hard, outwork the other people, and then you'll be successful. And so, and by the way, you can to a certain extent that is helpful. But when you're talking about huge, massive breakthroughs, it's very limiting because everything's got to be done in the 3D world. It's got to be a phone call, an email, a physical action. And like I said, I told the story of my son, he did very little physical action and got a huge result because he was operating in the non-physical world, where we can, quantum physics says basically everything is just energy. It's a wave, right? Then with our intention, with our imagination, when we focus on it, we make it physical. Now, some people, I don't believe that. It was Einstein. And those guys came up with that. It's not me. And so when I say everything's created twice, when we are imagining something, we are creating. In quantum physics, they say every thought creates. It might not make energy slow down to matter completely, but there's some level of creation in every thought you have. And so when we look at, my question is effort times effectiveness equals results. So if you just try and put in more effort, but you still maintain the same level of effectiveness, it's not like a huge uplift. And there's only so much effort you can put in because we've got 24 hours in a day. But if you increase your effectiveness with the same amount of effort, like you can double, triple, quadruple, 10x. There's a guy who wrote a book, 10x is easier than 2x, but 10x is not 10 times more effort. He said it's actually sometimes less effort, but more effectiveness. And so that's what I look at. Now, when you look at 10xing, you said something like, you're moving, getting frustrated. Sometimes you said sometimes the answer is just to pause. That's an effective action, a pause. Spending time just pausing, spending time meditating, spending time sleeping. You might go, what does that have to do? No, those are effective actions. It gives you more energy. Meditation increases your creativity. Using your imagination actually starts to change things, not only in you, but on the outside of you. It starts to bring things to your attention, starts to create opportunities. So all these things are effective action, and yet the one thing we're addicted to is just what we can see and feel, what we can touch and what we can see. Those are the only, I can see an email. I can, touch a physical object. Those are the only things that we think are real, but there's so much more real. And also the other thing too, I think with effective action is the things we're resisting that we know can have an impact. Those are the things that we need to lock into because, and I do this too, right? We rotate to things that are fun and easy and enjoyable. And those are good. It's good to have some of those in your life. I like that. But also we have to go into the things that we're resisting. And with our stories saying, I just can't do that, or I'm not good at that. That's where the gold often lies. When I was writing the book, I would, write, and then I would send to the editor, and then she would send back some enhancements and, some questions. And oh man, I'm not a detail oriented person. I want to like dig into this chapter again. And I would resist it, and I would like procrastinate. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And then I'd go, what, just do it. Yeah. You say you don't like it, just do it. And I would dive in. I'm like, hey, this is actually kind of fun. Right. And that's a good idea. Or, I'm going to add something here based upon what, comments she made. And it got better. But it made the book better. Like if I would have not done it and just like, basically just whatever, it would be probably, in my estimation, not near as good. I did something I didn't like to do, but when I did it, I'm like, actually like it. I just had a story about it.
Okay. So here's my last question then.
Yeah.
In the way that you wrote this,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about simplicity at the beginning, but you also took very big concepts and stayed away from the like meta that, like, I love talking about the meta stuff. There's so many cool things, from quantum physics to energy to spirituality to even finance and economics. I love jumping into that, but it's not necessarily helpful for the audience, not helpful to the practical and the tactility of things. And it's also a lot of fun to talk about. So how do you keep yourself anchored in what needs to be said and what can be left unsaid, right? Is there just no more pull for you to try to prove anything? Are you focused on the audience? Like, how do you, tactically, what do you do to make sure that you're not drifting into a whole different terrain?
Yeah, the way I tend to do it is with stories, right? So stories get a lot across without going into, tons and tons of detail. Even like if I would have written that book not as a story, it would have been way, more detail. There's enough detail in it though, where people, like I've had so many people say it's changed my life. This book has changed my life. But if I would have written it the way I probably was going to write it, like as just a how-to book versus a story. But the stories make you feel. The stories they paint a picture, picture paints 1,000 words. And so with stories, you create understanding. And even when I give keynote talks or trainings, I mean, some of it's not stories, but I use stories. I'm telling you a story. If I could say, look, you could think a thought and, potentially have somebody show up on a sidewalk and that could, make you a lot of money. You go, bullshit, right? But then I tell you a story, which is a true story. I didn't make the story up, of my son. You're like, whoa, okay. And then some people say, skeptic, that would never happen to me. And I go, you're right. It'll never happen to you. Right. Because the thing you have to understand, again, I would say this over and over again, whatever belief is held in your subconscious mind, below your level of thinking about it, right? Whatever's down there, that's what's creating your life. And if that is saying that'll never happen to me, or that's a bunch of crap, then you cannot deviate from that. Now, the good news is you can change the programming. If you don't like that programming, you're not screwed. That's what the breakthrough code's all about, is how do you live a life without limits? Like, you figure out where you're stuck, and then you apply the principles to get unstuck in a life-changing way where you go, whoa, like I can use this in other ways. Does it mean that we're never going to feel like we have a limit? No, you're going to feel like that often. But it's just another opportunity. That's about being human, right? It's a growth opportunity.
Yeah, to me, I've always leaned into my athletic history where the point was to get to resistance. Mm-hmm. The point was to get to the stuck. The point was to get to the place where it didn't feel so good. And then you're somewhere growing. You're in the terrain to experience a breakthrough, as you put it.
That's so true. Yeah, when we feel comfortable that we are, maybe stuck in a good way, right? You like what's happening, but you are stuck. And as human beings, we're meant to advance and grow. When you start to feel that you're venturing into an area where you are a little uncertain, it's a little weird, but you feel like it's right, that's where you're really growing. But most people don't like that feeling. It's like, I'd rather just feel certain about everything. I'd rather know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'd rather, I'd rather know in advance that the money I just invested is going to make me millions and millions of dollars. And intuitively you can know some things, but there's always going to be a little bit of uncertainty because the mind is learning something new. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, you're introducing a new concept. Like even when we, do something different, like I did it with you guys, like where we grasp our hands the way we normally do and see which thumb's on top and then take them apart and I'll put the other thumb on top. It feels weird. Why? Not because it is weird. It's just different, right? It's different for your mind. Your mind's like, whoa, you don't usually do that.
It's so simple, man, but it's so effective. I've really enjoyed seeing you talk. There's something else I picked up on that I knew, but I had not put numbers to. This is on page 140. For those of you that are about to buy the book, when we communicate with another person, our words convey only 7% of our message, while voice qualities like volume, pace, tonality, and inflection convey 38%, and our body language, which is comprised of gestures, movement, and facial expressions conveys 55%.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom, what I think is so special about what you've done here, not only is it simple and meaningful, but you've also woven in really important information, the analytical side of things, not just the story. You've woven both hemispheres of the brain in a really special tapestry, man. I've really enjoyed reading this so far, and it's just been so cool to have this here to share the connection with you. And
yeah, thank you.
I'll ask one more short question. Yeah. When you think of getting in your own way, there's a lot in here that is about making change, being stuck. But what does it mean to get out of your own way to you?
I think it means, to not always feel like you're, at least for me, that I have to be in control of everything. Control is an illusion anyways, because things are always changing, right? Nothing, they say, when a man enters into or a person enters into a river, and then they go back a year later and at that exact same spot where they enter in again, it's a completely different river, right? It's not the same. And we cling to, I want it the same. I want to know. And it's just not. Like, that's a losing game, which is cool, right? That's a good thing that it's not the same. If it's the same, like, you'd be the same. You wouldn't grow. Yeah. And so life is always changing. We're not going to be in these physical bodies, forever. Like, that's changing. But it's beautiful, right? The evolution is beautiful. And and this is one I really I struggled with, right? When you give up control, that's when you actually probably have more control, right? Because now you see things for what they are and you're able to truly create. When you go, it's got to be, and that's the other thing that I think that stops a lot of people. All right, I want this. And it's going to start here. It's going to go here. And then it's going to, come this way. And then we'll go that way. And then I'll get it. No, that's exactly not the way it's going to happen. And if you're addicted to that, then, it won't happen. Like, let it be created. Let life kind of take you in a direction and then, feel like it's not going to happen. Some of the biggest things that I've had happen in my life, I decided what I wanted. And then something happened which looked like, oh no, it can never happen because of this. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why? How come that thing that I don't like right now, why do I'm saying that's going to stop me? Maybe that's what I needed. Maybe I needed something that just like got rid of my control of having it to be this way. And I've had some of the hugest things happen, even though I've had challenges that I thought were just so daunting, I couldn't get through them.
Dude, I'm smiling because I've really I love that quote. If you think you know how it's going to happen, that's exactly how it's not going to happen.
It almost never does. I mean, unless it's something super simple. Like, yeah. Something big is let the universe, let life like just you stay focused on the end result. Stay focused on the end result. Change your story, upgrade your story, keep taking some effective actions, and let that life force guide you. Let it be that wind at your back. Let other human beings, like that book that I wrote, I didn't write that book. It came through me. I'm not smart enough to write, a book, right? I mean, I guess I am, but not with the stuff in that book, right? That came through me. It was not me just writing that book. I had to give up control of having to be every single word is me.
Mm-hmm. I just happened to turn to a line. Tapping into universal life force requires focus, action, and faith.
Mm-hmm. A lot of faith, a lot of belief. And again, that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with. They just can't maintain. They can, but they're not using their willpower in a way that allows them to maintain that faith in the stages where they can't see any proof of anything happening. And you can do that. Like even Jesus said, these things I can do, you can do and more. He said, but and all you need is the faith the size of a mustard seed. He said, if you could point to that mountain and say, move from here to there, and it would have to move from here to there. But it just shows you how little faith we have, right? And because of that, we get so caught up in, I have to see it. I have to see it. I have to, see it and touch it. And you can see it, but see it in your imagination. And I challenge every single person to come up with something big you would like to create, something that's in alignment with your purpose. So, I mean, not something you could do just something just to create it if you want, but something that would be meaningful, something that even if it's a lot of money, make it meaningful. Like, if I was able to create this, it would mean that I truly am a creator and I could share with other people, how to create. Or I could, share the money with good causes and really enjoy the heck out of it myself too. Like, you don't have to be a martyr, but come up with something really big and start to apply these principles and then have faith. Like if a doubt pops up, boom, get it out. No, I'm there. I have this because I test that all the time. And whenever I do that, miracles happen. Like miracles happen far beyond what I could ever create.
I have zero rebuttal to that.
Well,
That's a beautiful
you're
statement.
proof of it too. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, you're part of, in many ways, you're part of the thing that I thought of, the dream, the vision, the capability, the possibility, the breakthrough. You're a part of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
This conversation is a part of that.
Great being with you. I'm so glad I met you back in Phoenix, and your mission is so powerful and you're helping so many people. And I'm really proud of you and everything you've done, and you're an amazing dad too. So that's your most important job, by the way.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Aside from everyone going to buy this book, because if you don't, I'm going to reach to the screen and give you a little tap so you get to the store. Where can people learn more about you, about your work, about the amazing things you're doing for companies and groups and leaders?
Yeah, a lot of my work, like this book is pretty unusual because a lot of my work is really with big companies, big tech companies, working with senior leadership. And I have a team that goes in and does training on becoming a better speaker, presenter, be more persuasive, leadership. But TomMcCarthy.com, there's some things there that's mainly geared towards speaking. I think go to thebreakthroughcode.com. There's some resources there. I speak about the book a little bit. And if you do get the book, early on, I can't remember, it's before it gets into it, there's a link you can do to be able to get, they'll be able to get some free videos from me. And then Instagram, I'm on Instagram. I actually have somebody doing a lot of my postings, so I'm not on it, like doing all that, but there's lots of resources there where I've done little videos or little clips or things like, meaningful clips. Like we'll do some for your podcast. We'll put some on there. So there's a lot of different things. And I talk about the subconscious mind quite a bit and how to reprogram it, how to really be in charge of what's down there, knowing that that is creating your life, right? So those are some places. And my Instagram handle is the Tom McCarthy, not because I think I'm so great, but because Tom McCarthy was already taken. So yeah. So the Tom McCarthy, and there's some things there.
This book is incredible, man. I really enjoy the storytelling of it. It's been really great to kind of follow along the last several months since when we got introduced. And yeah, I'm grateful, man. I'm grateful for this time. I'm grateful to be able to dig in. I will be candid. There was a period, it was about 10 minutes long, where my son was downstairs crying, just getting ready to go to sleep, just kind of making noise. He wasn't crying. He was just calling my name. Yeah. And I was trying to be here and be there. And it was just interesting, like, that I felt. But on either side of that little window, I think the most relevant piece that I'm walking away with is just how much space we spend trying to change the conscious, knowing that the subconscious is really where the change needs to be made. Yeah. So I just really appreciate that reinforced message that you can change the conscious as much as you want. You can put a lot of effort in there, but that is really not going to be as fruitful as if you change the inner working.
Absolutely. Yeah. My kids, when they were really little, they would fall asleep in bed, and they're 3 years apart, but I would walk them back to their crib, eventually. But I would be telling them, you're beautiful, you're incredible, you're loving, you're caring, you're intelligent, all these things. And then when I would put them in bed, I would always give them a little kiss, and I would whisper in their ear, everything you want to accomplish in your life, you already have everything you need to accomplish it inside of you right now. It's the inside. It's the inside, not the outside. The inside is where everything is, where the magic is. When we keep thinking it's on the outside, that we need this or I need that, it's on the inside, and it's there. And if you work with what's there and you get out the things you don't need anymore that were useful maybe for a time, and you put better stuff in there, then nothing you can't do. I don't think we have any limits. I mean, there are things right now that people can't do for sure, right? But 15 years ago, we couldn't do this. We couldn't, talk on, you somewhere and I'm somewhere else and see a picture, and, it's crazy, right? And even now it's kind of crazy, right? Because it's going through the air. Ooh, it's going through the air. You can't see it. Well, okay. Well, there's other things you can't see. You can't see a thought going through the air either, but it's there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Dang, man. Tom, I'm so grateful. If you are in anywhere, in any position in life where you are ready for a breakthrough, please get a copy of this breakthrough code. Give Tom some attention and love on his socials. We'll have hopefully many more interactions and collisions in the most beautiful ways in the years to come. But know that even just connecting with you, having this, and getting to spend some time digging into your craft, your art, has already made a tremendous impact on me. I'm grateful.
Well, you've made a big impact on me too, Aaron. I really admire you and everything you're doing, and the way that you do balance your commitment to being an amazing father with also being, amazing in your business. So thank you. Congratulations.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being